welcome to yet another episode of Creating a Better Africa, and that is episode 5. Today you're gonna hear more of corporal, comrade, leadership, because I'm with a student activist who masters in public administration and management, and that is Khutso Mamabolo. Thank you for coming. Say, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm fine. I feel like I hijacked you because I remember last week I was like, I'll tell you when the time is near. Jiggy, next week I'm like, we're shooting, But I hope that didn't put a pressure.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a hijacking. I think I was fairly ready. You gave me some ample time, a week. I think it's fine.
Okay, that's okay. So, I was going through your bio, and then I was like, I'm deployed by God to confuse the enemy. Please unpack that.
Deployed by God to confuse the enemy. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I think people should not necessarily be in the know of your next move. Whatever it is that you do, you should not necessarily let people in as far as what you intend to do. So you must forever be confused. I know it might sound a little bit arrogant, but
no,
whatever
it's
it is
political. Like I'm deployed, and I'm like,
there is no coincidence in politics. So whatever move you take, it must be one which you are fully prepared to, but people must not really know what is in this move.
Basically, people should see the outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, one can say that. Just prepare things on your own, and then people will look at the results.
Okay. And then, I noticed that I tried to come up with a term that can explain it. That you're oriented to everything that's happening around Africa. Like, I see you're participating where it's Africa Day, where it's something. And I'm like, what stimulates your Afrocentrism?
Well, basically what stimulates my Afrocentrism is how far Africa has come. So there are a lot of injustices that are currently taking place in Africa. Our history in Africa is exactly what drives me towards striving for a better Africa. If you look at our history as Africans, the colonial history, and this guise that we are under, that Africa is now a much better place to live in. I think it's something that is falsely narrated by the mainstream media. A lot of people are under the false guise that Africa is a better place to be in than the past. And if you go to check your own history and you compare it with the current circumstances or the current conditions in Africa and many other African countries, because people in our country, in our community, they normally narrow down their African views towards South Africa only. But if you look at what is happening in other countries, you will see that the injustices are currently taking place. If you look at countries like Cote d'Ivoire, they're still paying their historic debt to France. So France and other Western countries are still having a huge influence in African affairs. They dictate whatever it is that is happening in Africa. So for us to be able to be in a position whereby we can competitively compete with our counterparts from other parts of the world, one must just look at ways of ensuring that the Western influence in Africa is put to a stop. And I like some of the moves that people have been taking to go to the French embassy and other embassies to say that countries like France must leave African affairs to Africans.
Sure.
And I think that's exactly what we must do as Africans. We must ensure that we strive towards a fully independent Africa, which will ultimately see us competing with the rest of the world. But as it stands now, I think we are only limited to political freedom. We don't necessarily have the power or our absolute influence to dictate our own terms. We often consult with Western countries, which is something that I'm against.
So you every day, do you read something for this knowledge? Because I'm trying to concentrate. Did you just wake up and you're like, I'm conscious?
I'm not really much of a reader, but I do read. Mostly I follow YouTube videos, try to make my own research here and there, and I see the pattern of how Africa is slowly being crippled, and something that many people are not aware of. So that's where my interest lies. I'm just trying to see ways in which we can all contribute towards a better Africa.
And that, as you say it, and me noticing that you're so much oriented to African matters, African-related matters, I want to ask you that why is African identity important? Because that's what you're telling me right now.
Yeah, well, African identity is very important because if you look at what is currently happening now in the world, I think Africans are all over the world.
Sure.
Many Africans are thriving in whatever field they are in, be it football, be it whatever. So for us as Africans to be fully accepted and viewed as equal partners of the world, I think we must portray ourselves as Africans.
We must embrace ourselves.
We must embrace ourselves and our cultures and whatever it is that we've been doing. I know that now, like, we're living in a global world, things are slowly changing, and that might force us to sort of, adopt Western culture movements. But I think in so doing, you must not neglect where you come from and neglect the core values that you hold.
To interject you,
yeah.
What you mean is we must be representatives of our continent, no matter where we are.
Yeah, and basically what has been happening in the past. I like what has currently happened. I think it's in the DRC or Tanzania. I think it's Tanzania, where the Maasais were told to leave a certain location for the purposes of development. I think they were trying to build a 5-star hotel there. And those people refused, that this is the land of our ancestors. So it means something to them. Of course, they were going to take them to another place, but for the fact that they refused and said that we want to remain in this particular land shows that they still value that particular land. I think that's where Africans must go to. Many other things that are coming into Africa in the name of development are slowly but surely taking away our pride in what we value. So I think people must resist the temptations of just living for the sake of money and other things, but also ensure that in so doing, you keep what is it that we got as Africans, and you preserve it for the future, because many people are still going to benefit from whatever it is that's currently happening now, and our values must forever be enshrined in whatever it is that we do.
And I think we can be able to do that if only we are grounded and rooted to our African identity. Because if it's in you, then there's nothing that someone can do to say something otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a bunch of revolutionary leaders, So I had to choose the late Herigwala because I've read so many articles, and I got that he's an orator. He was an orator. So I was like, okay, I want to be an orator. I want to give speeches. That's why I chose him. So I want to know which quote of his or line resonates with you most and why.
Well, I don't necessarily have a direct quote of Herigwala, but what I can say in relation to him is a struggle stalwart, and Herigwala was fearless. And I think at some point in his political life, he was suspended for just speaking truth to power. He's someone who was forever standing by his ground. He's not someone who you find on the wrong side of things. Always ensured that he puts the people first, and he believed in socialism and things that are going to ultimately benefit those who are at the margins of the human condition. So it's just a matter of being true to yourself, and I think the legacy that Herigwala has left for some of us who look up to him and other people who came before us is that of saying that no matter what, or the injustices which might happen after you take a certain action or after you stand your own ground, you must forever be firm to your own beliefs and just do whatever it is that is necessary for you to make a certain change. So Herigwala did exactly that. I think he was also a teacher. He did a lot.
Yeah, he was a teacher. He
really did a lot.
Okay. So I want to ask you that, like you said, you speak something about socialism. So I want to know, for you, like socially, politically, economically, where do you want to, or what impact do you want to have on the world in a decade?
Well, I think it starts now, or it has started already. So I think my main thing is to just mobilize the youth and try to make them more conscious of their surroundings and what the youth must represent. I think one of our main problems in the world, in South Africa also, is the fact that we allow people who are so close to leaving this particular place called Earth to dictate our future. So young people are not necessarily interested in whatever it is that is going to happen to them. They are just some part with policies. They do not necessarily play an active role in policy making. So the most important thing that we must do as young people is to mobilize ourselves, because if you are to say that young people deserve to be heard, but you do not necessarily implement in a way, but stand your ground as young people and be in solidarity with what you believe in. I think us being united as young people towards saying that this is what we want as young people. I mean, if you look at the unemployment rate here, it's extremely huge. It's just something that we cannot tolerate anymore, especially among young people. So young people must be united towards a common goal of saying that we want a better South Africa for ourselves. We want a better Africa for ourselves.
And to interject you, when we look at leadership, we're looking at the youth.
Exactly. Exactly. So in order for us to effect those social changes and political changes, we must first start by being united. Because if you are to have a few young people saying we want to do that, they can easily be, bored or suppressed. If you look at what happened to Julius Malema when they saw that this is a radical young person who is trying to realize economic freedom, they dealt with him from his own political party. But of course, he went to form his own called the Economic Freedom Fighters. But I'm just trying to say that exactly if they see a young person who is having an influence among society, what they will try to do is to first, promise them something. If they don't succeed at that, they will try to just keep them one with the other, be it political or otherwise. But if you are going to do it as a united front, I believe that it won't be easy for those who have power to destroy the ideas that young people carry to be successful.
Like you said about the identity, I think it has to do with being grounded in rooted. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. After break, we're gonna still be with Khutso Mamabolo and continuing on our African-related matters. Stay tuned to hear more. Thank you. Welcome back to our episode of Creating a Better Africa, episode 5. I'm still with Comrade Khutso Mamabolo, our student activist. Before the break now, you speak about how our rate of unemployment has surged, and it came to my consciousness that this is a detriment to our youth, and indeed we are suffering actually, because having unemployment at that rate, it's such a, I wouldn't say it's disgrace, but I'm making a better attempt to explain how bad it could be. But I want you to tell me, where do you think our regime fumbled, both country-wise and continental-wise?
Well, country-wise, I would say that everything went wrong there by CODESA. When they were busy negotiating with the National Party, I think that's where things went wrong, because they failed to get their priorities right. So you would say, this is what we want. I think mostly they were just focused on us attaining political freedom without looking at the basics. And the basics in this regard, I'm referring to land and many other things. I think the fact that South Africans, the majority of them being black, are still landless is something that we must deeply reflect on and try to just come up with ways of ensuring that we ultimately deal with that. And fast forward, we got our political freedom. We did not say anything regarding the land, which is enshrined in the Freedom Charter, that we must get the land, we must have access to the land, because land is something that can be used to change one's own state and come up with better things. So even now, recently there was this thing of amending the Constitution, Section 25, towards expropriating land without compensation. That's something that was politically abandoned. They came up with other things. They tried the willing buyer, willing sell, and many other things which didn't work. So our struggles as black people in South Africa can be directly linked to the fact that we are landless in our country. We do not have land, and there are no prospects of us getting it anytime soon. As far as the continent is concerned, I'm not too sure. I think it was in 1956, somewhere during the times of Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, when they were at what is now called the African Union, when they were trying to ensure that Africa becomes one, with one currency, one president, one capital city. Kwame Nkrumah spoke of this, and many other African leaders did not necessarily agree with him, despite the fact that he was preaching something which is very concrete, solid, something which was going to assist us as Africans, something that is going to make sure that now, as we are suffering now, we do not realize this suffering that we are realizing now. So they did not listen to him. That's where things went wrong. So if you find someone saying to you that, let us do this as Africans, let us prioritize our own continent, but you find you come against that, other heads of state will be thinking that, hey, what if I take this move? What will the president of France say? What will the United States say? What if I get assassinated? Stuff like that. So you just find people who are not really interested in putting Africa first. They're just interested in ensuring that they cling on to power. Their countries, maybe they can be better in the eyes of the West. But now we are still in that state of suffering, regardless of the many leaders that we came up with as an African continent, the likes of Thomas Sankara, who also spoke about us being united. So all of these things were abandoned. And I think now what is said is the fact that we lack leaders like those who came during the time of Bo, Sekou Toure and Kwame Nkrumah. So we lack such kind of leaders. We do have a few, but their influence is very limited. You find that most of them are in the opposition benches.
Yes.
The ones who are in power now, they are controlled by the West. The West is telling them what to do, what policy to take. The IMF, the World Bank, they're just dictating African affairs.
We lack
and which is
unity in this continent.
we just lack unity and something that we had an opportunity of getting. And whenever there are prospects of us being united as an African continent, we struggle. I mean, there are many divisive forces. The West will come, probably assassinate our leader, diffuse our struggle, stuff like that. We know what happened to Muammar Gaddafi recently. I will call it recent, even though it happened, I think, a decade ago. But it's a recent thing, the fact that we still had a leader like a decade ago who was speaking about African unity, who paid for the membership of other African countries that are struggling in the African Union, who did a lot for the country of Libya. But still, he was seen as a dictator, he was seen as a rebel, he was seen as all these bad terminologies that you can associate with a leader you don't like. So that's where we went wrong. And I think now the leaders that we are having, I won't call them cowards, but I'll just say that they are afraid of being sidelined. They are afraid of being dealt with. Because immediately when the media labels you a dictator, when the media labels you corrupt, no one will want to listen to you. Because that's what we get fed with. So we grew up just getting all these terminologies from the leaders that we now admire because the media hated them. And they were afraid of what they stood for and what they wanted to do for their countries in Africa.
And this could tell us that we are really not grounded or rooted. What we were talking about, the identity of Africa. And now that we gotta put something to the table and also be able to remedy it. I think we are able to see what's the problem. But how can we remedy that?
Well, I think ways of trying to come up with remedies must first start with the political will. I mean, politicians have a huge influence.
Sure.
They dictate almost everything in the country. I think all these heads of state must have the political will to prioritize Africa and ensure that Africa is a global role player, effective global role player, not just a role player of having minerals that are going to be extracted by countries to the benefit of the West and other countries. I think that we must have the political will, and I like what is happening in other African countries. I mean, the ECOWAS region there, I think they are making strides, and even this free trade African agreement that is saying that we can trade freely among us as African countries is something that we can welcome. But I think that the moves that we are making are a bit stagnant. We are still afraid of the UK, we are still afraid, if I take this move, what will they say, those who are funding me? What will they say, those who are giving our country aid? So it's a serious problem, but political will can just ultimately make us win this particular if we are united. I mean, if there's will from South Africa, but there's no will from Zambia, we are going to struggle. And that is what happened previously. I mean, the former Gold Coast, Ghana, what is called now, when Kwame Nkrumah said that let's do this, it was only him saying that. Other African countries refused. So even now, if you can say, maybe for example, Nigeria and South Africa are saying that let's strive towards a better Africa. Let us prioritize Africa. Let us ensure that our minerals are no longer taken away from us. And other African countries refuse. It's going to be a difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah. Like they say, it takes two to tango. Then I just do that. Yeah, if you can't, like, you have to work together. You have to work together. So, like, amid the two questions that I asked you, what is the motion that is lacking in regard to contributing to the revolution and economic emancipation?
Like I said, it's political will. I think that is the main thing that is lacking is political will. Not that they are not aware of what we are facing, not that they are not aware of what needs to be done, but the will to do it and the reluctance given what can happen if you are to take a certain move. I mean, we lack fearless leaders or radical leaders because people are always concerned with, if I do this, what will happen to me? If I do this, what will happen
because
to me?
Because you're not united. Like, probably you might come to the conscience of let's do this and you approach another leader like they're gonna assassinate us, they're gonna
exactly. And something that is very common in African countries, leaders are being assassinated. I mean, these days they just do it through military coups where they will say that, let's say for example they fund a particular group that will protest at the union buildings and ultimately topple the president because they are no longer interested or that interested in assassinating leaders because they've realized what kind of an impact they can have.
To interject I think they know what we are capable of, those people.
Yeah. regime change is something that they're highly interested in these days. They just want to topple governments and come up with their own puppet presidents, come up with their own puppet regimes that are going to be friendly towards their own policies. So that is what is happening. And these people that we are talking about have a lot of resources. They can fund people and do whatever it is that they want and ultimately see their own success. Yeah.
That's so sad. You know, we are about to conclude now, but there's no way I cannot speak about this woman, Mama Winnie Mandela. You know, I not recently I read the article where she was like, the years of imprisonment hardened me. I no longer have emotional fear. There's nothing the government hasn't done to me. You know, and out of that I was able to grasp a character of fearlessness, fearfulness, and a whole woman who was firm and grounded about who she was and what she knew she had to do to the continent, you know. And I remember watching this other speech. I think that was the memorial service of Mama Winnie, and Malema was like, the CAC was like, long live to the undying spirit of Mama Winnie, you know. So I want to know, what have you engraved from her, from out of your character? What have you engraved?
Well, like you said, Mama Winnie was fearless to begin with. She was really fearless, and I think she contributed a lot towards the struggle. It's unfortunate that she does not really get the credit she deserves, but at least there are some people who are doing certain things to ensure that her legacy lives on. Like you just mentioned, the CIC, the headquarters of the EFF is named Winnie Madikizela Mandela House, and there was a motion that Cape Town International must be named after.
I remember.
Exactly. But going back to the question, I think what she has done, and like something that I will forever appreciate her for, is the fact that despite her husband being imprisoned, she did not really say that since the main man is no longer here, let me retreat.
Yeah.
She didn't. She fought. There are many pictures and videos of her being, manhandled by the apartheid police and all these other things. She led from the front, and many people listened to her. During the times when Mandela was in prison, she mobilized people and told them that it's our time now to fight. And people really fought. They listened to her. She was commanding, and I think that's something we must forever appreciate. The fact that she was ready to take anything that the apartheid government had planned.
She was like, I no longer have emotional fear.
Exactly.
Literally.
When you say that I no longer fear prison, I no longer fear death, what is it that you're going to do to me? So Mama Winnie Mandela was that fearless, and I think that now it's very sad to see what is happening to women in this country. I don't think she would be happy to see, you can just even reflect on the GBV and all these other things. Women are now seen as, there's no longer that threat from women as it existed in the past. I mean, even internally within the ANC, they feared women. Now, if you look at all these presidential candidates, if a woman rises, for example, Lindiwe Sisulu, I don't want to be political, but if a woman like Lindiwe Sisulu rises and says that I want to be president, people don't really look at her as someone who can equally compete with males. But Mama Winnie had that, and they were afraid of her. That's why they quickly dealt with her, because they did not want her to be the president. They knew that she had the capability of being the first female president of this country. And I'm glad that there are still other females within the political sphere that are still saying that we can still lead. We want to lead this country, and I think that South Africa is ready for a woman president or a woman in the judiciary who's going to lead the judiciary. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen with the Judge President Maya, but I think that seeing certain female individuals being considered for higher positions is something that we must really commend. So Mama Winnie's legacy and whatever it is that she has done throughout those years of apartheid and how she was sidelined, I mean, that's the sad part. How she was sidelined, how she's not really appreciated as if she didn't fight. It's something that as young people must try to change the narrative around and say that she fought for us when other people were in exile. Mama Winnie, I don't think she has ever been to exile. She was here fighting and leading from the
And she continued fighting until her final saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And she even said it that even though she remains a member of the ANC, but she spoke against the injustices that are happening with our government. So we must really appreciate her.
Long live the divine spirit of Mama Winnie. Long live. So, you said Zophumelela Vele. So do you believe Zophumelela Vele?
Well, I do believe that Zophumelela, and I'm not just saying this because it's something motivational to say, but I'm saying it looking at the fact that we are having a lot of young people who are now ready to usher in economic freedom, who are ready to take part and be the active role players in the struggle towards economic freedom in South Africa and many other African countries. So I believe that even though it might not happen in my lifetime, but at some point it is going to happen. Eventually, if we continue to conscientize young people around the real struggles that we are faced with. When we say unemployment, we must really explain what is unemployment, so that young people can be aware of their lived realities and what is contributing towards that unemployment.
And it's a reality that we've got to be awakened to.
Yeah, because now people are just comfortable with being unemployed.
Yes.
We just say unemployment maybe among the youth is 65%. They will just be comfortable because they don't really know what is contributing towards that. What can we do as young people to change our lived realities and the unemployment rate and among many other things that we are struggling with? Landlessness, as I mentioned. So we must be active role players towards ensuring that we ultimately realize that which we want, which is absolute freedom. By absolute freedom, I mean economic freedom and political freedom and otherwise. We might just be free in our own country and be able to benefit from our own wealth and the world being Africa and what Africa has to offer.
And I think the recession proof is only going to come after we have acknowledged and willing to fight for the unemployment.
Yeah.
Because I think when we have come to a recession proof, that's where we know, our country is actually reaching their economic emancipation. They're actually reaching the freedom, even there by unemployment or anything, So I think we're concluding. Yeah, we're concluding. And I want you to say two or three words to our fellow Africans.
Necessarily ways, maybe a statement.
Yeah, any.
Yeah. But what I can say to our fellow Africans is that they must first start by loving themselves. I think what we are struggling with is this African hate. When we see our fellow brothers from Somalia, from Nigeria, we don't love them, we don't appreciate them, we view them as outsiders, and we forget that Africa was never this colonized. Africa did not have these borders. Africa was one. Could literally move from any place you want.
To interject, did you ever come to a point where we had one currency continent?
No.
But it was initiated, like you said.
There was a process towards that, but it did not really materialize. But what I'm trying to say is that Africans must appreciate Africans. They must love Africans. I'm not saying that they must hate the real foreigners who come from the West and overseas.
But let's acknowledge
exactly. When you see a Zimbabwean, you must not say that you are a foreigner because of your language. I mean, there are many languages in Africa, and you must have one language, by the way, and that we can converse and use across the African continent. And like it must be the African language that we embrace as Africans. So Africans must love one another. Xenophobia must completely stop. I mean, some of the things that are currently happening now are unnecessary, and they are derived from the fact that we lack what is necessary for us to be uplifted. We don't have jobs. We don't have a lot of things, and that's why we then go to the notion of saying that Zimbabweans are taking our jobs. Whereas that is not the case. I mean, we say that no, they are contributing towards crime. Whereas the reality is that we are just failing to combat crime in our country. So if you are able to have tight laws and an effective security cluster that is going to work towards ensuring that there's no crime. Crime is crime, no matter who commits crime. And there are many crimes that are being perpetuated by even these multinational companies.
Yeah.
They collude, they do all these things. But because we are just interested in these other ones that are common, we don't look at what it is that multinational companies, which are mainly from the West, are doing in our country. So we must just tackle our social ills without looking at where do you come from, where do I come from. If crime is being perpetuated, it must be dealt with as such. So Africans must embrace one another, they must love one another, must stop this thing of saying that you speak a foreign language from Zimbabwe or Mali or wherever.
It's more like there's a veil on our face.
Exactly, then it means that I must hate you. That's not the way things are supposed to be. But also, as South Africans and as other African brothers, we must not just look at South Africa as the only place in Africa whereby one can be economically emancipated.
Yes.
We must just look at other African countries as well. There are many countries where you can go and do business and strive. I mean, countries like Egypt, you can go and do business there, and many other African countries. But this thing of saying that no, it only happens in South Africa, I think that's why even in South Africa is the country that is mostly known for xenophobic attacks and many other things. So we must venture into other African countries and ensure that we also come up with our own businesses there that are going
to interject you, but I feel like this tells us something about our country. It means there are resources and like there are things to make things to happen.
Not really.
Why? But where are they coming?
Not really. Africa is just a rich continent.
Oh not country-wise.
Yeah, and I'm now seeing that we are no longer concluding now. We're entering into a new conversation. But in conclusion, Africa is a rich continent. The DRC is having this mineral that they use to manufacture electronics, and they know the West. They know that this mineral is only found in the DRC, or maybe mostly found in the DRC. They go there to extract. So Africa is just a rich continent. There are diamonds in Sierra Leone.
Basically.
There are diamonds in Botswana. I mean, the GDP of Botswana, they mostly get their money from, what is this? Diamonds and all these other things. Especially now, given what is happening in Russia. Botswana now is getting a lot of money from their own diamonds. Other African countries have a lot of minerals and resources. So Africa is just rich. That's that
we need unity.
We just need unity and find the best possible way to use the resources at our available.
I now felt it now, like when you said it might not happen in your lifetime, because I feel like there's a lot that needs to be unpacked.
That must be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But yeah,
one way or the other, we will succeed.
Yeah. That are already conscious, that are already knowing what's happening and what needs to be happening, So I think like a disease would be contagious or something. I think we also need to put it to other people that are Africans, our fellow Africans. Like we gotta stay firm in this Afrocentrism, Afrocentrism. So yeah, guys, thank you. I hope you're gonna learn something. You're actually gonna learn. You're gonna learn from us. You're gonna learn from the leaders that I mentioned. You're gonna learn from everything, my space. And please don't forget to tell their friends to watch and subscribe. Don't forget to comment below on how you heard the interview, on how you heard the episode, on how you heard everything. And thank you so much. See you on another episode. Danko, comrade. Danko.